Friday afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Green Rush Live, the regularly scheduled business of cannabis talk show that Pro Cannabis Media produces every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And of course, after the show is over at 6, we go right into this week's Weed Talk News, now again anchored by Elena Pinto. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. So happy to be here on a Friday afternoon. We've got a great show ahead of us. It's going to be a preview of the CWCBExpo, which is in New York, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. We've got a lot of the principals with us coming on, but right now I want to introduce you to my guest host for today. Her name is Pam Schmiel. She is from New York City. She is also the correspondent for Weed Talk News that covers New York and New York City. Hi, Pam.
Hey, Jimmy, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And of course, it is the third Friday of every month, and that means we are so lucky to have the guy we go to from NORML in Washington, D.C. His name is Morgan Fox. Morgan, again, thank you so much for showing up here regularly, I might add, on the third Friday of every month. Thank you.
Of course.
So the big question, Morgan, we always start with this one, and I can't wait for the day when I don't have to ask you about the status of the safe banking movement. It's kind of a movement now. It's not just a bill, right? What is going on? What is the latest from what you can tell in Washington, D.C.?
Well, last week we had our first really legitimate hearing on the legislation in the Senate. Overall, I think that it was very positive. We heard some very interesting arguments from the opposition, in particular Kevin Sabet, who was, parroting the usual lines. But overall, I think that it was generally pretty positive. And, I think that one of the big things that most members of the Senate Banking Committee are concerned about is not necessarily cannabis issues, but larger banking issues. They don't want the legislation to be used as a way for banks to be able to deregulate themselves. So that's something that I think they're very concerned about, as well as their concerns that safe banking would potentially allow for cartel money laundering or illegitimately obtained legacy cash to be able to enter the financial system. But my argument against that is that a cash system with zero oversight and zero transparency is significantly better for criminal activity than a very tightly regulated banking system. So I think those arguments don't really hold too much merit. And myself and other advocates are speaking with members of the Senate, particularly on that committee, to help allay their fears in that aspect. But it appears that this legislation is moving forward. Senate Majority Leader Schumer wants to fast track it. And we're going to wait and see on when we can look forward to a markup and potential vote in the Senate Banking Committee, at which point it will move on to other committees or a full floor vote, and then potentially be paired with other legislation such as the Graham Act to protect Second Amendment rights for cannabis consumers, as well as the HOPE Act to help provide federal funding for state level efforts or state and local efforts to expunge cannabis records.
Now, if anybody's just tuning in and they want to know why nothing gets done in Washington, D.C., I think, Morgan, you just explained it, because it just has to go through committee after committee after committee until they actually get to the floor to debate it. And then, of course, they'll have a vote. Any idea the time frame? I have to ask that question.
Not yet. Yeah, I mean, it is a slow and arduous process, a lot of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we are moving in the right direction. Right. It really depends a lot on things that are completely unrelated to cannabis in many cases, just in terms of being able to get things on the schedule. And so that is a difficulty that we're facing. And I know that the Senate Banking Committee wanted to address this issue much earlier in the session, but with the collapse of several banks and some of larger banking issues that have been at play, a lot of their attention has been diverted. We like to think that these things should just be easy to slide through, but lawmakers have numerous issues that they're dealing with. So, and all of them are competing for space on the docket and on the schedule. And with a relatively limited amount of time available, sometimes it can be a protracted process. But things are moving in the right direction. And in particular, I think that the progress that we've seen in the base bill language, including not only explicit protections for community development financial institutions and minority depository institutions, as well as explicit language that makes it easier for people that work in the cannabis industry to be able to obtain mortgage loans, is a huge improvement. I personally would like to see an additional improvement, well, several, but the one that I'm really focused on is removing a previous cannabis arrest or conviction as an automatic red flag for any sort of banking activity within the space. I think that that is going to be a really important thing to add in order to make sure that we really keep the fair in the Secure and Fair Banking Act. But yeah, like I said, overall, things are moving in the right direction.
All right. And Pam, before I get to your question, I have to ask Morgan one more pointed one. How did Kevin Sabet, of all people, get an invitation to appear before that committee?
Well, he's really the only game in town when it comes to prohibitionists that have any sort of connection to powerful people and that have any sort of legitimacy. He's worked in several presidential administrations. He is, partnered with Patrick Kennedy, who also has a lot of political connections. And when you look around for prohibition voices to balance the conversation, as it were, he's really one of the only options, despite the fact that he prevaricates and misrepresents data as if it were his job, which apparently it is.
Exactly where I was going on that one too. All right, Pam, you got Morgan. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm curious. I'm not sure if you were saying like the time frame of when things would all pass through, but if the Safe Banking Act did pass and we're all cheering on, how long do you know how long it would take for it actually to go through and process, like to actually process so we can hit the ground running?
Well, I mean, once it gets through the Senate, fingers crossed, it still has to go through the House. There are a lot of issues in terms of getting things on the schedule for House committees right now. So I can't really give you a solid answer for that. But I mean, once it was passed by both chambers, I believe it would go into effect almost instantly.
Okay, I didn't know if there were other
there's definitely a catch-up time involved with that, where one of the things that a lot of advocates have been proposing is making sure that there are specific timelines added to a lot of the provisions of safe banking, so that it can't drag on forever. And this includes for the diversity ownership and participation reports, for actual implementation, for federal guidance for banks in the best ways that they can work with cannabis businesses. So the shorter answer is, it's impossible to know what the timeline is right now, and it's dependent on so many factors that are out of our control.
Right, because you would think that the banks have to now sit down and set guidelines on, KYC and all that kind of stuff. If this all passes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really up to the federal government to provide those guidelines, but obviously banks are going to be interpreting those guidelines and then developing their own policies internally as well. And I should mention that I think that a lot of banks will still, especially the larger banks, will still continue to not be interested in engaging with the cannabis industry whatsoever until it's actually descheduled. But there are numerous local and state banks that are very interested.
This is why we refer to it as Cannabis Standard Time. It will take its time. It will go one step forward and two steps backward. And then eventually we might actually see something. Think about this, people. The Farm Bill passed 5 years ago in 2018. Okay. And they're just now getting around to actually looking at the regulations for CBD and whether it is a food, a drug, an agricultural product. I mean, Morgan, how much time do you have to spend on the hemp world versus the cannabis THC world?
I really don't get too involved in the hemp side of things at all, but there is a lot of overlap, especially when it comes to determining what federal agencies are going to be in charge of regulating cannabis, or what sort of regulations that either the FDA or the Department of Agriculture puts on hemp-derived products that could potentially impact the marijuana market. and in particular, how all of it impacts consumers. So, it's really a mixed bag, but I'm primarily concentrating my efforts on non-hemp issues, but keeping an eye on what is going on with hemp and how it affects cannabinoid medicine, how it affects regulation. I think the current state of affairs is something that we really can't allow to continue because, there are a lot of people that are making a lot of money off of unregulated hemp-derived and hemp-synthesized products that have zero regulation. So, as a consumer advocate, that raises a lot of red flags for me.
Yeah. And it's a perfect example and a great segue to get into the Delta 8 versus Delta 9 derived products that are out on the marketplace now. And it is so confusing. Now, I met a chemist recently, a scientist, and he showed me this great diagram of the differences between Delta 8 and Delta 9. And it was basically just a little dash inside the symbol. And one was on one side and one was on the other side. And he goes, that's really the only difference. And I'm like, it's a freaking dash, for crying out loud. There should not be. The fact that we still have people making Delta 8 legal, and you can get high off Delta 8 products. It just is amazing. It shows me once again that the people who are making the laws just don't understand this product. How much time do you spend educating our elected officials about how cannabis works inside the human body?
Well, I'll take just a moment to, and this is going to come off wrong, but to educate you, Jimmy. One dash in the description of a chemical compound could be the difference between a deadly poison and a beneficial medicine.
I understand that. Okay, I never did chemistry. I get it. I get that there's a fine line there, and it's like code. It's like writing code for the internet.
That Delta 8 does exist naturally in the cannabis plant in very, very minuscule amounts. We have zero research on human consumption of Delta 8 in larger quantities, and so NORML is recommending that people be very careful with it, especially since regardless of the efficacy or safety of Delta 8, the fact is that the producers of Delta 8 products are completely unregulated. So they could be cooking this stuff up in a garbage, like garage lab, for lack of a better term, and you don't know what sort of impurities are going to be going into or coming out of that lab. And so, consumers should be very, very careful about that. The bottom line is that we need to regulate, especially inebriating cannabinoids, in a fair and reasonable and evidence-backed way. And unfortunately, the federal government has been kind of punting on this issue. But all of that is a little bit besides the point. When we're looking at federal legislation, there's so much exciting stuff going on right now that's not related to hemp-derived cannabinoids. But just to go back to that for a minute, just this week, the DEA reiterated its position that if you do any sort of chemical synthesis to a hemp-derived cannabinoid, it is a synthetic cannabinoid and hence still an illegal substance and not covered by the Farm Bill. I've been telling people this for years, that the DEA this is their position, and they are going to eventually crack down on it. Now, whether or not they actually crack down on it in terms of enforcement versus, cease and desist letters or just spreading that information around so that people avoid future enforcement, that remains to be seen. But their definition of what a synthetic cannabinoid is that does and does not fall under the Farm Bill is now quite clear. So I think everybody should take heed of that and react accordingly, whether that's lobbying lawmakers to change that definition, or whether it's changing their business model. But this is what the DEA says, and they have the ability to act on it now. And I think that there might be trickle-down effect for local law enforcement to be able to act on that as well. But yeah, moving on, there are a lot of other great bills in Congress right now that aren't related to hemp stuff.
I get it.
I'm curious about the what's the latest on marijuana research? I know, the DEA was only allowing Mississippi State College or University to to allow research there, and I think maybe they opened it up to one or two more universities. But I'm just curious what's happening on that front.
So the granting of research applications and research production applications is moving faster than it has in the past, and I believe that there's been one other federally licensed producer approved so far. I don't think they're up and running yet, but I'm not sure. And we expect to see several more. Interestingly enough, the DEA is also licensing psilocybin producers at the Ohio State University. But
And Arizona, I think.
it's possible. I don't follow the psychedelics field as closely as cannabis, but we are seeing a lot more move on the part of federal agencies towards facilitating research. Not as much as we would like, obviously, but again, moving in the right direction. An interesting hiccup when it comes to research is that very recently a veterans research bill, I believe it's the Veterans Medical Cannabis Research Act, or I forget the exact name of it at the moment, but it was one of the first cannabis bills introduced in the 118th Congress. It has bipartisan support. It sailed through the Veterans Affairs Committee on first reading and the Senate, and then Senate Majority Leader Schumer brought it up for a cloture vote to try to fast track it to the floor for a vote. And it was denied based largely on party line votes, as well as a couple of swing votes, and the fact that Dianne Feinstein did not vote. That was pretty surprising, considering this is a very, very limited research bill. It really only mandates the VA to study observational data, and then within a year, report back to Congress on whether or not it thinks that it would be useful for them to continue in clinical trials. So this is not a very toothsome bill. It doesn't really bend the needle all that much, but it certainly gets us into a better place than we were before. And the fact that this bill was, which is relatively milquetoast, was knocked down on party lines very recently was a little concerning, and makes me worry a bit about the chances of broader veterans medical cannabis access bills like the Veterans Medical Marijuana Safe Harbor Act. Which has also been introduced in both chambers and has bipartisan support in the House, but not in the Senate. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. I don't think that that necessarily is indicative of how the Senate will vote on safe banking, but it's definitely something to watch out for.
Can we get the debt ceiling taken care of first? As much as I want the cannabis world to move forward, but we don't want to default on any loans as a country. It just wouldn't be a good look for the country. And yet it's still being debated, and both sides are pointing the fingers at the other. There's no chance in a million years that cannabis is going to be tied to the debt ceiling, right? It's just no way.
I can't imagine that it would be, but you never know. Anything's possible. One thing I've learned after doing cannabis policy reform for 15 years now is that it's a very nuanced issue with a lot of tendrils connecting it to other issues. So, through a stretch or a more direct connection, maybe it's possible, but I sincerely doubt it. What I'm more worried about is that it will overshadow all other issues and kind of make any other progress on non-debt ceiling issues kind of grind to a halt for the time being. This is something that we've seen in a number of other years and a number of other Congresses, where a major issue will pop up that really just sucks all the air out of the room.
Yeah, I want Pam to get involved with this next one, because it does go to human behavior. And what I'm talking about is human behavior is, as soon as New Yorkers voted in legalization into their state and subsequently into the city, everybody was firing up on the streets. I mean, they didn't have to wait for, somebody to tell them it was okay to do it. They just started to do it. And you see that a lot in our democracy, that when the voters speak, they say, hey, it's legal now. We just voted it in. When they don't realize that, oh, you know what, we're going to have to still deal with regulations, regulatory boards, commissions, cannabis commissions, and that sort of thing before you can actually fire up in public. It's always been.
I should point out that New York is, I believe, the only state that explicitly allows cannabis consumption wherever tobacco consumption is allowed. And I believe every other adult use state has very strict prohibitions on public use.
Yeah, I know in Massachusetts, and we had somebody on to talk about this. Actually, on the medicinal side, it was okay to fire up, if you will, in designated smoking areas if in fact you're using cannabis medicinally. And most people will admit that it has medicinal benefits to it. It's just a question of where you can actually partake and fire up, if you will. But that's not something you see in New Jersey. It's not something you see in Pennsylvania, in other states that have medical programs that as soon as the voters get in, everybody wants to party and everybody. And I will admit that even in Massachusetts, now that the legalization rules are in place, I haven't smelled that fine odor in
Not
the
in DC, buddy.
And that's another story. Should we get into the DC, the district, and what they're trying to do?
I'm actually looking forward to the reintroduction at some point this year of a bill that would allow people that live in federally funded housing to be able to possess and consume cannabis, because right now they fear eviction based on that. Even if you're a registered medical patient or you're participating in lawful consumption. And not only is that really, really bad for like elderly and low income and veteran communities, but it also is a key factor in helping perpetuate racial disparities in citations and charges for the few cannabis violations that still exist on books in legal states. You know, when like these states pass laws, you see the overall arrest numbers drop significantly, but wherever there is a possibility to arrest and fine people, you continue to see those racial disparities. And that says more about policing than it does about arrests. But one of the main factors is that in federally assisted housing, you face eviction for consuming cannabis inside or even possessing cannabis on the premises. And so people go to the street where they are vulnerable for arrest and citation.
And yet, if you talk to law enforcement, and Pam, New York's it's the wild, wild west. It's a big playground basically going on right now. Law enforcement really doesn't want to have to do this anymore. At least these are the people that I'm talking to. It's like, you know what? The voters voted it in. It's legal. I don't even think they want to prosecute it. Writing tickets, completely different animal. I get that. But there's a disconnect between law enforcement and what the voters wanted and what they thought they got. And New York is a perfect example of it. Pam, have you ever talked to any of the police in this city about what are you doing with the firing up in public of cannabis and how they don't even want to deal with it?
No, I haven't, but I think it's pretty obvious that they are, turning away from it. People are setting up in a park here, Washington Square Park, which is, steps away from New York University. That's where all the illegal people come and set their card tables up all over the park. There's policemen all over there. You really see them on the street. No, they don't. They're not really paying attention. They're just kind of looking the other way. And you can also see how they're reacting to the storefronts here. I mean, they don't have the legal right, but now the governor is making some changes on that and giving them authority to go in and kind of take these stores down. But they're really kind of focusing on the landlords, which I actually thought that a while ago, like, why aren't they going for the landlords? So, they're being selective as long as you don't put it in their face. I think that they kind of look the other way, meaning just the other day, a THC infused bakery got closed down because they were too close to the mayor's residence on the Upper East Side. And then, of course, across from City Hall, that was the first one to get shut down because you're right there in their face and you're making it an embarrassment to them. So they will react to that.
Yeah.
Well, this is a huge problem with cannabis enforcement across the board, is that it's largely discretionary and there's no consistency. Not to mention the fact that it's not necessary to come in with a SWAT team rather than like a couple of people with a clipboard to be able to affect change. But all of this could have been avoided had the New York regulatory body done a better job of implementing the regulations and implementing the licensing program at a much swifter pace, and made the barriers to entry much lower so that there were more opportunities for people to get up and running more quickly. But because they made it so restrictive and so expensive and so inaccessible, of course, people are going to start taking those opportunities. And then it creates a situation where you have all these unregulated operators, some of which are operating in good faith and under best practices, many of whom are not. And then it creates a social issue that makes the entire system look bad. Whereas if you start from scratch with very low barriers to entry, no arbitrary license caps, and you implement it quickly, you don't have to worry about these things.
So,
But
wait, hang on, Pam, because this is a pointed question, and it's very timely, because at any moment Minnesota could become the 23rd adult use legal state, because the House has now passed it. It's supposed to go over to the Senate. The governor's
And it already passed it.
It's done.
It's on its way to the governor's desk.
Well, but he hasn't signed it yet, right?
Not yet, but I expect that to happen in a couple hours.
That's what, you know, it's funny, the last time you were on, we got Delaware, in that conversation, they had done the same
Knocking
thing.
them down, man.
Is there a goal? Is it all 50? Is that the goal, or at 25?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, getting to that goal, I think, is going to take decades.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the rate at which we're going, you know, I think that we're going to get quite a few more over the next 5-10 years. You know, a lot of people have always said, you know, once you get 25 states, then you'll have you know, a near majority in the Senate. I don't buy that. There are still people that represent legal states that are not in favor of federal legislation to move this issue forward. And you know, it might take a little while for them to come around or get voted out. But I think that we are in for somewhat of a long haul when it comes to getting to 50. There may be some states that never get there. And, you know, they and their residents will, you know, suffer the unintended consequences of that.
That's right. Hey, Morgan Fox, as usual, from NORML. We love it when you come on. It's great to talk with you about these things. You can sense the frustration of people that actually follow this on a regular basis, i.e. myself and Pam. But there's so much depth to this issue. It's not just as cut and dry as we're going to decriminalize it, and then we're going to open up a market, and there's going to be rules and regulations. It really does take time, and there is a process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I say the same thing to advocates as I do to investors. This is a long haul game. You cannot expect overnight change. I mean, NORML started more than 50 years ago. Right. You know, when I personally started in cannabis policy reform, I think there were only 9 medical states and no adult use states. So, you know, there's been a lot of progress, especially in the last decade or so, but there's still a lot of work left to do. And unless you're prepared to dig down and participate in that, you know, this is not a field for dilettantes.
Right. Absolutely not. Hey, Morgan, thank you so much. Now, of course, we're going to focus on the business of cannabis. We're actually going to preview the CWCBExpo that's coming up in New York, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Pro Cannabis Media will be on the floor. I actually think we're going to be able to go live from the floor. That's what I'm hoping for. I've taken all the steps I need to do to make that happen, and I'm hoping that works too. Morgan Fox from NORML, thank you again for your appearances, and don't go away, everybody. We're going to start talking about the business of cannabis and the CWCBExpo after this break that we're a little late for, but you know, it's 4:20-ish. Okay, enjoy your ish on a Friday. Morgan, thank you so much again for your appearance.
Thank you. NORML will be at CWCBE as well, so stop by the booth, get some information, join up, start a chapter.
There you go. That's what we want you to activate, your passion for the cause. We'll be back with more of Green Rush Live after this.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in I'd forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you gonna do tonight? Oh, just, you know, like every other night, just gonna lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. Well, take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh, mama, put a good buzz on. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. There's nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
And we are back for the second half hour of Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled Business of Cannabis talk show that we run here on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. So happy to have Pam Schmiel alongside from New York City. And Pam, what is the scene in New York City? There are now about a half dozen legal dispensaries open, but I also knew there was like 1,100 illegal storefronts going on. So are we starting to see some of those? Are they closing down? Are they shutting down? Or are they continuing to operate as far as you can see?
They're pretty much continuing to operate. I mean, they're targeting a few, like I was mentioning before, that if the stores are located to a government office, you're likely to get shut down. And they're now targeting landlords. I know actually in my building where I live, we pressured, or there was an illegal storefront in my building, and our landlord, we pressured our landlord to get rid of that dispensary or that illegal storefront, and that was successful. So I think if residents of a building put pressure on these landlords, that's effective. So, you know, it's really coming from a bunch of different areas. It's the citizens and it's the government officials. As long as you don't throw it up in their face, I think that, you know, slowly but surely, but it's a little bit of a, I guess, a game of whack-a-mole. I don't know how it's going to, I don't know, but I feel like they have to be more aggressive, honestly. Because it's ruining our reputation as an industry, as the cannabis industry, you know, having these illegal storefronts selling, you know, Skittle looking gummies or, you know, THC infused candy. And, you know, they're opportunists. There is nothing legacy about any of these storefronts that I've seen. And I have no sympathy for law enforcement going in and shutting them down, because they're taking away our tax dollars. It's costing us more, and the storefronts look horrible. It's a throwback to the old, you know, what people hated about the industry. What, you know, people who are not into it. So when we've been coming out for, you know, years, planning these beautiful dispensaries that are welcoming to anyone, no one who has never done, you know, tested or, you know, stepped into using cannabis is going to walk into those storefronts. They're too intimidating. So it's not a good scene here.
I am shocked that there are New Yorkers that are taking advantage of this. Shocked, because of course they are. You know, this goes back to what I said. As soon as the vote went in, everybody goes outside and fires up. I mean, it is, they just can't get it right. And I'm talking about states. Once they get it on the ballot, how long it takes once it passes to actually start the legal process of the distribution sale of cannabis. You know, it took Massachusetts 2 full years from the date of the vote to even open up 2 dispensaries. And I think New York is a little bit ahead of the game there, because I think you guys actually got it done in a little over a year, if I remember correctly.
Right. Oh, I didn't know it took Massachusetts that long. So that was worse than us.
Yeah, but keep it now. Again, what Massachusetts, well, let me rephrase. I want to make sure I'm fair here, okay? Because it is my state, okay? But what bothered me once again was they completely never gave the dispensaries that were operating as medical dispensaries an opportunity to get into that adult use world. They had to refile all the applications. They had to have a completely different set of background checks on every employee, even though they had already done it for their medical dispensaries. I mean, they made it as difficult as possible to open and even start. And that was the directive of our governor at that time, Charlie Baker, who basically said to everyone, we're gonna crawl before we walk, before we run in this industry. And it's just another example of how government has purposely slowed down and made it as difficult as possible, putting as many taxes and compliance issues on the table for legal entities to sell this cannabis to the public, okay? They made it as difficult as possible for them to even be able to make a petty profit, right? And then what they did is they gave out too many licenses, too many grow licenses, and now you have a glut of product. Once again, showing that they really had no idea what the market was going to be, how it was going to be enforced, how it was going to be regulated. And Massachusetts had to start from scratch, and they had to write the regulations. And I get that, and it's never an easy thing to create new regulations. But why did Arizona get it? I think they got it right, because as soon as they voted in adult use, the government in Arizona said, well, we already have a whole bunch of dispensaries open for the medical group. Let's just roll it right into the adult use. So they didn't have to spend more money and more human capital as well to get all the forms in place. And they just said, You're a
Right.
medical dispensary. Here's the line for medical. Here's the line for adult use. Some dispensaries in Massachusetts have both. They continued to block a lot of the medical only dispensaries from even having to get anything wholesale. They had to create verticals. What the Massachusetts state government did was, if you're going to get a medical license, we want you to be able to control your crop for your patients. So they made them all get into a grow facility that was licensed. Now, of course, there's a bill before the Massachusetts legislature to pass to get rid of that clause and allow the medical dispensaries to become adult use dispensaries as well. And again, there's no consistency in any state law that I can see. Maybe Arizona. You know what? We can always call Karen Black, our Arizona correspondent, and actually ask her, and we'll get to that at some point. But Pam, the whole point of legalization was to hurt the legacy market. Okay, right? Because the legacy market has existed. It will continue to exist. In fact, right now, it's flourishing in legal states because they're able to undercut the amount, the market, for an ounce, let's say. It's a lot cheaper to do it that way. So I guess my question here is, how would you get it right? What do you think that they're doing in New York, and how quickly do you think they can turn it around, not to get rid of the legacy market, but to allow the legal market to at least start?
Well, I mean, for people who don't know, in New York, they're putting the social equity entrepreneurs first. I applaud that.
Sure.
But once they, and they were setting up funds, like $200 million fund, and the state was going to, match it with like a $50 million fund. They outsourced a team to raise these funds and get investors in here. They haven't been able to raise one single penny. They've already gone through the little seed money that they had to get started, just trying to, I guess, pay for people's salaries and this and that, but they haven't raised the money. So, okay, you haven't raised the money, so you can't launch these social equity entrepreneurs because they don't have the money to do it if you don't help fund them, or, give them loans or grants or whatever you're going to do. So they should have moved on from that. And as soon as they realized that they were not getting the funds in, and they should have moved on and started opening it up to whatever the next step is. Is it the medical dispensaries now can move forward with recreational? Is it opening it up to just regular entrepreneurs coming in? However that next steps were planned to be, that's where they should be going. And they're standing strong on trying to move the social equity entrepreneurs forward, and it's holding up the market, and that's allowing the legacy to flourish. And then on top of that, they're not enforcing these illegal storefronts to shut down. I have had a retail storefront, a hospitality retail storefront in this city. If that health department ever walked in and you weren't abiding by that law, you bet you got a big fine. And if you didn't pay the fine, or if you kept making those, breaking those rules, you were going to get shut down. So why doesn't that apply to this? So there's a lot of different reasons, but now they are allowing the illegal market to have storefronts, first of all. And no one that you talk to in the city who is not in the business knows that these are illegal. One after another, friends and acquaintances that I meet, everyone thinks these storefronts are legal. So what? Okay, you don't want to shut down these illegal storefronts? Let's educate the community, New Yorkers, about which is legal and which isn't. They're doing a little bit of an attempt with that. So that's what's fueling the legacy market. And then, of course, the cost that we all talk about,
Can I ask a question about the illegal storefronts? Because you're there, you're in the city, you understand this. Can you walk into an illegal store and not show an ID, or?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you mean like serving underage?
Right, not
Oh,
hopefully that isn't happening, and Lord
okay.
knows I'd really like it that they would card everybody.
Right.
That being said, but I know in the dispensaries in Massachusetts, you got your little welcome room and your little greeter that's there,
Right.
little cubicle, and they ask everybody for their license and their ID, and then they have to go into the computer and they put it in there that this person showed up at this time or whatever, and this is his license number. But I'm sure at the storefronts, it's pretty much, hey, the door's open, come on in and buy some weed. I mean, is it
Oh,
that?
absolutely.
It's that
Oh,
late.
yes. Oh, it's yeah. I hate to say it, but a lot of these storefronts, they're just like they're walking into like those old, Lotto newspaper, grab a snack kind of soda and a chips kind of storefront. That's their kind of model that everybody's using, and how you can distinguish between the legal and illegal. We only have 3 in the city, I think. Is they're called smoke shops, and so because that's what they always called them, they were tobacco stores. So you see smoke shop. And it's these old tobacco stores and newspaper stores and lotto stores that have just now put the candy in the THC candy on the shelf too. So that's really what it is.
Yeah.
That's who they are, actually.
Yeah. No, I get it. And
Oh, there's no rules in that store. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and this is what happened. This is what happens because everybody thinks as soon as you open up a cannabis store in your neighborhood, that you're going to have lines around the block and you're going to get hundreds of people lining up and coming in and doing that. And it just doesn't happen. It's a novelty in the beginning. So you do have those lines, but after a period of time now, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And that's where the host community agreements in Massachusetts have come under such fire, because they were in place to handle the overload of people lining up and the impact on the community. But here it is a couple of years later, there's no more lines. They don't need extra police and that sort of thing. Hey, I think we have a gentleman by the name of Barrington Rutherford with us. Is that true? Is that you,
It is
Barrington?
true. Hi, I am here. How are you?
Good. And is it Rutherford or Rutherford?
It is Rutherford.
Rutherford, terrific. And tell us a little bit about what you're doing. I have your bio here, but I always find it interesting to hear how others kind of describe what exactly they're up to and what role you have in the cannabis space.
Sure. So today I am the Chief Operating Officer of Combs Cannabis Ventures, Combs Global Cannabis Ventures, that is. We are acquiring assets that are being divested by through the merger of Cresco Labs and Columbia Care.
Gotcha.
So there was a big announcement back in November about the assets that we're acquiring in Illinois, Massachusetts, and New York. And in addition to that, I'm chairman of the board of Park Jordan Real Estate, a cannabis-focused real estate firm focusing also on the New York market. I sit on the board of the Marijuana Policy Project and a host of other sort of engagement, if you will, throughout the industry. I come to the cannabis space through a background in commercial real estate. So I was head of real estate and development for Cresco Labs for a number of years before leaving back in 2021. But happy to don't need to read the whole bio, but happy to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
No, happy, and I'm glad. I appreciate getting the background on you, because I'm gonna jump right in here a little bit, because we were talking about the reality of the fact when voters vote in legalization in an individual state, and I believe we're going to have Minnesota as the 23rd state today. This is a live show, so we can just say it's going to be today. There's a novelty, and during that time, when, like in New York City now, everybody wants to just open up a storefront and sell their wares. I mean, that's just it's been the wild, wild west, right? Because they can't roll out the legal regulations and the compliance because they want to control it. There has to be a slow rollout. So I guess the question is, how does the industry try to make sure that it gets done the right way. And I don't know if they can. I just don't know if there is a way to make. No state has gotten it right, Barrington. That's kind of what I'm saying, right? I mean, New York certainly didn't, right?
Look, I think what you're saying is completely right. I think that, you know, in defense of the regulators, this is not easy. Policy making is not easy, and policy making in the realm of cannabis is particularly, you know, managing the pressures that come from advocates and activists, but also the realities of the business of cannabis, and all of that, to, you know, like weighing the complexities of all of that in a document that is more than a set of regulations. It's really designing a marketplace, how a marketplace should operate, and what we think is healthy there, and what and you know, in support and furtherance of the goals of the legislature or of the people who voted for it in that state. It's not easy. It's complicated, and you're right. No one's gotten it perfect yet. I think that every state learns a bit from those that went before, and they seem to be, as a broad statement, generally speaking, they seem to be getting better with time. But I don't envy the work of the regulators. I think you asked a really important question in there, though, and that is, like, how does industry help to get this right? And I think it's really through thought partnership and engagement, direct engagement with the regulators, with the legislators, making sure that the language in the bill is clear, that the legislative intent is clear, that the regulators agree on what legislative intent was and on the right way to proceed, that keeps the spirit of the legislation and the issues that all of the various stakeholders have, that you know, is respectful of those, but also holds those stakeholder positions secondary to a healthy marketplace developing, right? And so again, I think that direct engagement and thought partnership, I think that at some point you got to get over, you know, occupying like your singular perspective, and really be a thought partner in, like, how do we get something done that is most workable for the most amount of people? How do we get it done? How do we come up with a document that speaks in a holistic way to the problems that we are seeking to address, as well as to the opportunities that we really want to capitalize on? Like, it's really, I think, thought partnership, and we all kind of have to lay our arms down and really come to the table looking for solutions that work for, you know, as many stakeholders, or all the stakeholders that we can.
Pam, I'm going to throw it right at you and let you ask Barrington whatever you want.
Right. I agree. I mean, I'm curious how you know, as far as New York, I feel that they just need to set aside, you know, right now, until they can figure out the whole funding process. I feel like that's really, you know, the social equity funding that they're trying to get and that they don't have. And I feel like, you know, we're really stopping the industry in New York because of this, and that we need to, wherever they want to move next, I think that's where we need to go. Is it to give it the, you know, the MSOs to open it up to rec, or do we, you know, go to just open it up to regular entrepreneurs? I'm not sure, but I feel like we're stuck in this, you know, this spot right now, and it's really disrupting the industry here, and I think it's really causing big problems. I'm just curious what you think about that.
I think that the answer,
I know it's hard.
It's hard, it's complicated. Look, I think that the answer in my view is that the idea of, you know, of some people, of like creating these like tranches of advantage that are based on time. When does this group come in? When does that license happen? I think the answer is turn it all on, go. Turn on the regulated market, right?
Yes.
Like, in the absence of a regulated market, an unregulated market will fill any void. And that's not in support of the goals of any of the stakeholders, right? So what we have today, where we are right this second, is I gotta imagine, I mean, I haven't talked to everybody, but I gotta imagine that all of the stakeholders to the regulated market, to the regulated industry, are all fairly unhappy today, right? And so the answer here is, I think, rather than trying to figure out who to advantage next, the answer is turn it all on. Let's
I
give
agree.
out licenses. Let's allow the incumbent medical operators to go. Allow the cards that have been the card applicants that have now been awarded licenses, let them go. Those who are the social equity licenses that were authorized by the MRTA, give them out, turn them on. Like, the answer is go. Like, let the regulated market loose, let it go, let it begin to develop. I think that until we do that, we're trying to solve for phantom problems. We don't have those problems, right? And we're trying to create solutions for them. And I think that what we really should do is, like, let the market go. Like,
I agree. Let it play out. Let it play out, and then help as it's needed in the certain areas.
That's right.
You know, yeah, uplift it in the certain areas. Yeah, but at least let it get going, because now, you know, they're already talking about helping you know, financial distress companies. Like, they're already talking about failure, and we only have what, seven dispensaries open in the state, and they're already setting up you know, safety nets for these companies that they said are going to be in financial distress. So it's already happening, and there's only 7 open. So, you know, there's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Can we just open up the damn banks, please? Can we
Yeah,
just
open
up
the
the
bank.
bank? Get rid of 280. Treat them with the same respect that every other new industry is awarded. But no, we can't, because this is cannabis, and the people that make the rules continue to show their ignorance about this plant. And there's plenty of research out there. It's just the question of how motivated are our elected leaders to get it right? And the answer is not very. And that does concern me.
You know, it's an interesting point, right? Like, and I think that, again, I'm here for the complexity, right? I think that there's opportunity in the complexity, but I think that there's some things that we should really have a very common sense approach to. Like, you know, if Amazon decided that they wanted to open some sort of industrial facility in any state, and we can pick on New York since we started the conversation there, but this is certainly not unique to New York. But if Amazon decided they were going to open a facility, they would go in and start negotiating how much money, what is the public investment that should come from the state in order to incentivize us to actually open that facility. Cannabis is an industry that thus far, to my knowledge, has grown, has proliferated in the states that have made it legal and have created thousands, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs, right? While receiving not a nickel of public investment, asking for no public investment, asking only for the right to exist. All we ask for is the right to operate. And it's crazy that the positive economic benefits don't so dramatically outweigh, you know, like any of the, you know, the positive economic benefits clearly outweigh the economic cost, like the economic, you know, it just makes no sense to me that, like, it's so hard, that it's so that this remains so controversial in these times where, you know, states and municipalities all over the country are struggling, like crumbling schools, crumbling infrastructure. We pay a lot in taxes and ask only for the right to exist, only for the right to further proliferate. And, you know, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, and don't say, Mr. Elected Official, we want to do right by those who have been most impacted by the war on drugs, but we're going to make it really difficult for them to even turn a profit. I mean, they're going to put so many things, so many barriers in place that it's difficult to do that because you can't overregulate. This is the issue, you know. And of course, it doesn't help that you still have a federally illegal substance. Barrington, I know you were a little late. You are welcome, if you'd like to, stay for the next half-hour panel if you'd like. That's just a courtesy we have. I don't want to put you on the spot because we are live. So you can actually make that decision after we take this break at the top of the hour. We are going to get into the CWCBExpo, what's to expect there. Are you going? You're going to be, are you talking there on a panel? What's your role at CWCB?
I think I'm helping out as a co-host. So I imagine that I'll be kind of running around, hopefully introducing some of my friends and colleagues in the industry and their panels. These folks who are far smarter than me and have, you know, tremendous expertise. I think that the expo is slated to be fantastic with really a really impressive roster of experts. And so maybe I'll see some familiar faces and get to introduce them and the exciting topics that where they have expertise, and I'm going to listen in and take notes and learn a lot.
There you go. And are you going to wear your Yankees hat?
I will likely wear my Yankees hat. Yes.
Well, if you're from New York, I have no problem. It's the wannabes. It's the ones that come from out of state of New York that wear the Yankees hats that really bother me, because you should be supporting your local team. Like my team locally is the Red Sox. Sorry, I'm from the Boston area. It's the way it works. But I'm not going to get into that. We're going to take a break. Barrington, I hope you'll come visit me on the floor at the CWCB too. We're going to be right next to the Accounting Buds booth. And I believe we're going to be able to go live at 3 o'clock each day of the expo. But until I get there and set up and turn on our Wi-Fi anywhere and see where we're at, I never know what's going to happen.
Well, look, I appreciate the invite. I will definitely come and find you. I'll definitely see you there.
Terrific. And I won't have a Red Sox hat on, I promise. We're going to take a break. We're going to take a break. We come back. I'm hoping that Roz and Lakeisha are out there waiting and will join us for the next half hour. We can talk more about what's going to happen at the CWCBExpo in New York in just a few weeks. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product.
Both cool the smoke from 1300 degrees to just 90 into your lungs. Plus, the maze pipe and pre-roll filters get rid of all the gunk that you just don't want in your lungs if you can help it.
Add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I. And welcome back to the second hour, third half hour of Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled, really live business of cannabis talk show that we do every Friday afternoon from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. And I am Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. I've been hosting this show, at least for the most part, pretty much for over 3 years. We've been live on a Friday afternoon, and I'm very actually proud of the fact that we continue to get great guests and have great discussions about the world and the business of cannabis. And we're going to welcome in Roz McCarthy and Lakeisha. I'm going to guess it's Camise.
Camise.
Sorry. Camise.
You were so close. You were so close.
Yeah, I know, but that only helps in horseshoes. We all know that. Okay. Roz McCarthy from Florida, Orlando. Tell us a little about what you do in the industry down there.
Absolutely. Well, not only down here, but throughout the country and globally. I'm Roz McCarthy. I'm the founder and the CEO of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. We're the largest 501c3 nonprofit community-based organization serving communities of color as it relates to social justice, social equity, health equity, and public policy in the cannabis and hemp space. So I am so grateful to be here today with you guys.
Well, we're grateful to have you and to be so dedicated to that cause too. Lakeisha, tell us a little bit about what you're doing. And where are you? Are you in Louisiana?
Yes, I am. I am in the capital city, Baton Rouge, and I am the program director for Minorities Medical Marijuana, their Project Clean Slate program, which is about cannabis expungements. So many people have been harmed by the war on drugs, and with most of our yet to be United States legalizing in some form or fashion, we must make sure that we don't forget those who are left behind, who either are still currently incarcerated or formerly incarcerated and still have these charges just following them around throughout life. So we do expungements in many states throughout the United States, and we also do wraparound services. And that is like the really big thing that connects us to our community. We make sure that their voting rights are reinstated or they register to vote. Our veterans, if their benefits were stopped due to that incarceration, we make sure that they get those reinstated. We also help them with if they want to get into the cannabis industry, because I mean, if you got caught for selling a little weed, you kind of know your different strains and different, plant types and everything. And so I look at you as subject matter experts. So hey, we want to get you into the industry if you want to be in there. However, even if you don't want to be in it, we don't want this to be a barrier to you getting employment, to housing, to anything that is basic rights within our community. So we want you to be wholly and holistically restored, just like we embrace this plant holistically, we embrace our community holistically.
That's nice. Go ahead, Pam. I know you're dying to ask these ladies a question. I know you are. You got something?
I'm just absorbing. If you could just give me a second. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I'll give you 5 seconds. I told you.
Just totally absorbing this. Okay, I'm sorry.
No. So you hear that we have 2 dedicated professionals to the cause, and we were just talking about how the process, if you will, the lawmakers and the regulators are trying to do the right thing by those that have been most impacted by the failed war on drugs, but access to capital continues to be controlled by those people that aren't there, if you will. How difficult is that for you guys? And we'll go to Roz first.
So let me first kind of put things in context, right? So when you look at things that, going back to Lakeisha's point, her point is that our social justice program and what we're focused on as an organization is Project Clean Slate and relieving people, releasing them, repairing the harm, right? Repairing the harm sometimes means expungement services, sometimes it's wraparound services. I would say between 75 to 80% of the people that we support, they're really not interested in being in the industry per se, but they just want to be able to say, like, if we're going to have a legalized industry, how can I get my record clean? How can I be repaired from the harm that has been done, right? Then the separate conversation is the entry of equity operators, being people that have been harmed by the war on drugs, that have been incarcerated, that have been arrested due to, I'm not even talking about selling, I'm talking about having being arrested for, for paraphernalia, being arrested for a joint, a roach, right? And we do know that there were some systemic ways that policing happened in our communities that focused on search and sniff, being able to, if you sniff something, you search, and therefore it gave you probable cause to be able to then find other issues that were going on with that individual. So you had people's rights that were definitely being that were
violated.
Exactly.
And law enforcement was profiling for decades.
For decades. And we know this. I know this. I lived in the community where I saw it right across from my street. I would see law enforcement. We used to call them the Duke boys, and they would go and they would have these black bags over their heads, and they would go and ram into a house with, I've seen that in my neighborhood growing up. So I do know what that looks like. So the conversation about access to capital is a issue that the whole entire industry is going through right now. Yep. And honestly, if you are a big company, you don't feel the brunt of access to capital as much as if you're a smaller equity operator or an equity would-be operator, because you don't have all the resources to find capital. And so the access to capital conversation is such a bigger issue than just this. It is an industry issue that we are dealing with right now. And that's why Lakeisha and we were in DC for the week during 420. We were on Capitol Hill meeting with lawmakers to express from our perspective how we have to get and how important safe banking and getting a comprehensive bill across the finish line is so important.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. Lakeisha, access to capital is, I think Roz made a great point. Everybody in the industry is looking for capital, right?
Well, I think the whole thing, when we look at the whole thing from social equity and social justice, it's really systemic. People think, oh, well, this person may have this charge on their record. Sorry that they got that. It was a time when it was illegal, but it follows you in so many ways. This person, say they want to get into the industry. One of the barriers to entry with the licensing application is, do you have a felony drug charge? Do you have any felony charges whatsoever, or even misdemeanor charges? Most of the people who come through and receive our services are non-violent offenders. Right. And then it continues on as far as, like Roz she had an excellent point about the over-policing part. I have people that come through this clinic, they are trying to do the right thing. They know they have this on their record. They have gotten their medical card and they have been stopped by law enforcement. And even though they have their card, they're in compliance within their state. This person who is in law enforcement saying, well, I don't know if this is medicinal or if this is adult use and we're a medical state, so we're just going to go ahead and give you this additional charge on your record. And now it just keeps rolling at that point. So I think we need to educate definitely our law enforcement. We need to also look at this as a systemic whole, that this is still impacting lives to this day. There's still that over policing going on in each of these communities. And until we stop that, we can't get these people to where they can even get into any industry or access that capital. And they're always looking at that as a blight. I had a friend of mine telling me that someone, they were trying to get them some insurance, and because of something on their record dealing with cannabis, they had an issue with that. So it just continues. Yeah.
Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to find out what you think about, social equity entrepreneurs coming into the industry in the different states, giving support to these entrepreneurs. To me, it feels like we haven't really gotten that right yet, that they're almost setting them up for failure, for different reasons. Like, I mean, not social equity or not, most people getting into this industry right now are new entrepreneurs. And it's one of the toughest businesses to be in, to start coming in at the beginning. And, I'm just curious how you think each state or a state could better support these social equity entrepreneurs, instead of just maybe, instead of throwing money at them with grants or, high interest loans and things like that. So I have my own ideas.
I'll give that to Roz, because Roz, I know you got multitude of resources for this.
I don't know if it's resource. I have a position and an opinion, and I think that the intention of social equity programs were in good places, but the execution of them and understanding how to create business owners and operators in the most complex, compliance-driven industry that I've seen in my lifetime, it does seem like people are set up for failure. And access to capital is the number one way. So there's two things that needs to happen. And if this could happen, if you're a state that's going to produce a program like social equity, then you need to identify how are you going to help them get funded and how do you connect them with mentorship. Those should be out the gate before you even put down how many licenses you're going to give out, before you even put down about I'm going to create this program. If you know, how do you diminish the cost for them to build out and become operational? And that should be baked in the cake before the program actually rolls out. And also connecting them and tie it back to, think about a state like Missouri, like Illinois. There's millions and millions of dollars of tax revenue coming in. But that tax revenue is going to other different communities and populations that you already have budget for, that should be applied with that budget money. The new money that's created through cannabis should specifically go to the equity programs first. Identify how you're going to help them financially, as well as how do you help them from a mentorship, because we are in an industry that if you want to be the legalized side of it, you need some mentorship. You can't, I mean, it is so difficult. And that's just my opinion. And then it stretches on from there.
What do you think of franchise? I feel like
I love a franchise model. I listen, we work with a group out of Missouri. His name is Corey. He has a franchise model called Field State. He has about 3 stores in Missouri. And he came to us back in 2018 and said, hey, Roz, I have a franchise model concept of retail in the box. Listen, there's so many Black millionaires that are from McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Burger King. You think they said, in fact, that it's Burger King or it's Kentucky Fried Chicken? No, they own the business. They pay the rights to be able to have Burger King over their store. They're still operators. And so we need to look at that as an option as well. But we also need the funding that if I'm a McDonald's operator, I can go to SBA and I can maybe get a $2.25 million loan or $1 million loan or what have you. Right now, there's no loan products. And even if there are loan products, it's not enough. I don't know if you guys understand that with the SBA, Small Business Administration, the average loan size that they give out is $665,000. If you are a small cultivator, that does nothing, but that's just some pennies in the bucket of what you need.
Right.
And
No,
this is
I
why-
didn't even think of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why, honestly, I have been supporting safe banking, but I've been supporting safe banking to have to allow institutional investors, create a safe harbor for them. If I'm an investor and I'm an institutional investor and I'm interested in cannabis, but you don't create a safe harbor so that I don't get pinched or that I don't get in trouble for being able to actually look at this as an opportunity for to fund these funds. Think about New York. There's a $200 million fund that was created across the board. People are talking about funds, but there's no money in the funds.
I
Because
know it. I know.
You got to get investors to invest in the fund. And we don't understand business. And I'm not a finance person, but I'm pretty smart where I can understand it. And I'm a business owner. Shout out to Black Buddha Cannabis, my brand. But I'm a business owner, and I had a equity investor who I've been courting for the last 8 months, and due to the current environment, walked away from the deal. And I'm like, I have everything in order. I'm in 3 states right now and still walked away from the deal because right now the price of money and cash is so expensive for cannabis companies.
Yeah.
And you know what? I can tell you this much. I actually worked at one of the only 2 medical marijuana dispensaries here in Louisiana while I was in law school. And I got to see the entire operation from seed to sale. I did trimming. Lord knows they need to get paid more because it's mind numbing. I've done like project management, HR. I've done, finance, everything, recruited almost 1/3 of their workforce. And one of the things that we had the issue with was banking. We had to look all over for banking, finally found a bank, and then the amount of fees they charge every single month. And it's like, come on, the overhead and dealing with 280E, it is crushing to those small entities coming in and just trying to function in a legal market. And just the stigma is still there, and it's so prevalent, and they're allowed to. I mean, I think this safe banking would not only help out these entrepreneurs, it would also help banks, because banks are still looking for, where do I go with this? How do I deal with this? I'm putting myself in trouble possibly with the federal government, and their legalized business getting shut down over and over and over again, getting their accounts closed for doing legal business. And it just so happens to be dealing with cannabis.
Yeah.
How about a media company that deals with cannabis and has an issue? Because
Right.
I two accounts got shut
Right.
down because I was funding a cannabis related business, an MRB. And look, there's injustices in this whole industry. It's obvious that they wanted to make it as difficult as possible to get in it and to survive it, because they wouldn't have put in as many regulations as they had. And then of course you got the federal law and the state law that just don't jive at all. So it's a mess.
I'll tell you this: we're super excited about, you can only do what you can do, and
Right.
there's so much that needs to be fixed, right?
Right.
And we're so super excited that we're headed to New York for my relationship with CWCBExpo has been one of many years. Shout out to Christine Iannuzzi and Mary and all the team over there. I used to sit on the advisory board, and we're just super excited that post-COVID that we're going to see this strong conference back at the Javits Center, and that we're going to be there. Lakeisha will be there on site, we're going to pre-register people to not only come to sit and see if we can get and look at your case to understand if you qualify for expungement services, but also be able to attend the conference, walk the floor, see the industry from the now legalized state, and figure out if there's opportunities to get in, because it doesn't have to be as an operator. It could be as an ancillary provider of services that allows you now not to have to worry about maybe being a cannabis company that's touching plant, but I could be someone that's providing nutrients, or I could be providing packaging. Now I'm not a cannabis company, I'm a packaging company. And so that's the exciting opportunity that we have to get ready for.
Go ahead, Pam. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would love to hear. Oh, sorry. Now I'm really getting into this. I want to hear what they have to say about what is your experience or response in the educating the senior minority community?
Yeah.
You know, only because, you know, that's a community that is, you know, fear has been embedded in them, you know, their whole lives with their children or whatever. You're like, what's, you know, are they accepting? Are they, you know, how's that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will tell you this. I would be one of those seniors almost. I'm 53, so I'll be that 55. I already received my AARP card. So, and I
It's too
You
young.
don't look it.
They send those out
Don't look it.
earlier and earlier in your life.
I
You
know,
know that.
right? When I grew up in a country city, a country town called Oviedo, which is outside of Orlando, and we know our seniors. And when I was growing up, cannabis, weed was, you know, marijuana, all the words that you want to use for it was taboo. And if you touched it, you know, it was the devil's lettuce. You were going to jail. And so it is. The reason for creating Minorities for Medical Marijuana was to be the bridge to help educate all populations and levels of generation, right? And generation of people. And so our younger generation that's more open, but our older generation, they're seeing the proliferation of medical marijuana programs and they're asking questions. And if they're not asking questions, they're the caregivers, their daughters, their sons are saying, hey, my mom is going this, she's on, you know, she's on Toradol, or she has, you know, muscle relaxer for a back issue, or she fell and she broke her hip. Do you have something? CBD was an opportunity to introduce this plant to them. And so we create, we have a program called Safe Access, where we actually partner with other community-based organizations, and we go into the community and we bring a physician who is a medical marijuana recommending physician, and we pay that physician to see low-income patients, mostly seniors, who would want to get their card, who can't afford that first physician visit. And so that's our way of helping to educate, but not only educate, to help you go from, okay, I'm thinking about it, but now I have my card, and now what's the next step in going into a dispensary and purchasing my product?
Do you guys think that the MSOs are finally recognizing the role of the social equity applicant, and are actually, some of them, are they instituting programs to help, maybe a workforce development program, something like that?
Well, in the state of Florida, there is I'm proud to say that M4MM, myself and Eric Range, we were involved with the language in the medical marijuana program in Florida, which has almost 900,000 patients on service. It's one of the largest ones in the country. Mm-hmm. And we were responsible for putting language into the law that says that each MSO, each operator who has a license in Florida, you have to produce a diversity plan that is focused on community education, community engagement, workforce support, as well as supply diversity. And so we are seeing some MSOs take that very serious and pushing forward, whereas we see some MSOs are just basically putting something on paper, turning it in, and not following up with the plan they're turning in. And so that's when policy comes in place, because if you have a policy and people are not adhering to the policy, what's the ramification of you not adhering to the policy? And we need to make sure that there's policy in place that says you will do this. This is responsibility to the industry, responsibility to community. And if you don't do it, what will happen as a result of that? And that is something that we're pushing for our lawmakers to enforce, for our agencies to enforce. And because to answer your question, I think some people will do it. Some MSOs will do it because it's in their culture from the top to the bottom, but there's more percentage that won't unless you do something that forces the hand.
All right. Well, you guys are great. And I can't wait to see you in person, because you're 15 feet away and you're about this big. So I look forward to actually seeing you on the show floor at the CWCB. We do have Christine Iannuzzi and Gretchen Gailey planned to come in for the last half hour, but I have to ask Pam. She has theater tickets. I know she has to get out of here. Is that, you still have to leave at 5:30? It's okay.
No, I can stay. I think I could stay to 6, and then I got to jet it out of here.
That's we won't go beyond
It's so
6, I
exciting, I
promise.
can't
Okay. And at 6 o'clock, we have our new show anyway. So Roz and Lakeisha, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks for having us.
You will always be welcome on an open forum like I have on a regular basis every Friday afternoon. So don't be strangers. Please like,
Listen,
share, and
invite us
subscribe.
back. Let's talk about brands. Let's talk about new opportunities outside of operators, and let's talk about policy and safe banking at the federal level. We need to dive deep. So invite us back anytime. We'd love to talk.
You got
Would
it.
love
Got it. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back on the other side with the show director and the chief strategist for the CWCB Expo that's at the Javits Center on June 1, 2, and 3. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Safetiva Labs in Westfield is fast becoming the #1 testing lab for cannabis in Western Massachusetts. Safetiva understands the importance for accurate on-time test results for your product. That's why their current compliance panel turnaround time is less than 2 days. That's Safetiva Labs in Westfield. For more information, go to safetiva.com.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product.
Both cool the smoke from 1,300 degrees to just 90 into your lungs. Plus, the maze pipe and pre-roll filters get rid of all the gunk that you just don't want in your lungs if you can help it.
Add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I. All right. Welcome back to the final stretch of another edition of Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled cannabis business talk show here on Pro Cannabis Media, on all of our outlets. And of course, you can watch us on Facebook. You can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on Twitch. You can actually watch us on our homepage at procannabismedia.com, and also our Roku channel and our Apple channel. And I'm sure I forgot one, LinkedIn. I knew I forgot one. Anyway, that's our network. We're on all of those. You can find our stuff there. Everything's on demand. And I'm so proud of what we've been able to build here at Pro Cannabis Media over the last few years. Pam Schmiel, one of our regular We Talk News correspondents from New York City, has been joining me as guest host today. And I so appreciate the fact that she's still here with me, because I wasn't sure I was going to have her the whole day. But thank you, Pam. And I appreciate it. And now we've got the show director and we've got the chief strategist for the CWCB, Christine Iannuzzi and Gretchen Gailey, join us. And Christine, I'm going to start with you. I could tell just in the break, you're pretty excited that this is happening again, right?
Oh, absolutely excited. You know, we've been into Javits, Jimmy, since the first show in 2015. So
Right.
it's our 9th year, and we are just thrilled. And we can't wait another less than 2 weeks. Yesterday was the 2-week mark for going live at the show. We've got a really wonderful conference program planned. We've got great exhibitors on the floor. You heard Roz and Lakeisha and Barrington. We've got great co-hosts. I mean, it's really got an energetic preparation, but it's really energetic and enthusiastic just to look at the lineup, just when you go to the website. It's just really cool.
And when I go to the website, and Gretchen, I'm going to guess this is your thing. I don't know. Okay. But there's more parties after the fact this year than I think I've ever seen. So, I mean, was that a strategic move to have more stuff going on around the expo as opposed to on the floor?
Well, I think that what you're seeing is just the excitement with the New York market being open. People are ready to celebrate New York, and it is New York Cannabis Week. So there are already a number of events already planned that we are also taking part in. So we are just thrilled to have people come out and really display the community that is New York. I think cannabis is such a community-heavy industry, and New York's is very unique.
Absolutely. And by the way, like, New Yorkers really need an excuse to party. Okay. Because as soon as the vote came through, they were like, hey, we're doing it. Let's party. Let's open up a storefront. I mean, it's a little bit of the wild, wild west in the city these days. But I guess we're all trying to make sure that this industry survives before it can thrive, because the roadblocks that have been put up in front of every single business are so difficult to deal with. And yet here we are, you know, with another trade show. How many exhibitors do we have at the trade show this year? And either one of you probably knows.
We're well over 200 right now. We're approaching probably 250. We're still putting them in, leaving the pipeline and heading onto the show floor. But we've got a lot of exhibitors, a lot of brands, a lot of new exhibitors, new companies, lots of female entrepreneurs.
And we want more females involved with this industry, because well, let's just leave it at that. I apologize for my race and my gender a lot on this show, because I really think the old white man has screwed up our country for hundreds of years. I'm sorry, but it's true. You gotta, I'm a history major. I know what happened. That being said, cannabis is a new industry. And unfortunately, I believe they put in so many barriers to entry for social equity applicants, for women, for sure. Things still have to change. And that's one of the reasons why we do what we do here, is give a voice to the industry, give them a fair and free and an open forum to come in and tell their stories. Gretchen, what exactly does the chief strategy officer do for a trade show? I got to ask that question.
Well, it's really about just bringing ideas and being on top of what's going on in the industry. I mean, you've just mentioned and highlighted a big thing for us are the barriers to entry in this industry. And that's why we try and keep our ticket prices low. That's why we're offering the OCM event this Saturday for folks to come out, and free tickets for people to get in who need them. There are promo codes all over the place, because we understand the barriers and what people are struggling with, especially coming out of COVID. That costs are often astronomical trying to get into these conferences just to attend, if you want to exhibit. So we often try and work with folks, and that's why we've come up with our Women's Pavilion to work with young startup women entrepreneurs who are looking for their place on the floor. And last year we had great success with the Women's Pavilion. A number of the women who exhibited there found their products on dispensary shelves just a little while later. And many of them are also returning now as paying exhibitors. So we are getting to see their success and the energy that comes off of the show floor, because people understand that we want to be a part of the community. We want to be a thriving part of this industry and not just another show that just wants to take your money. I think that's why people enjoy CWCB so much. And that's, as a strategist, is one thing that I want to make sure comes through to our exhibitors and to our attendees.
Yeah. I enjoy this expo because I don't see the same people that I see at some of the other trade shows on a regular basis. It's a whole new group of people that are in the industry. Pam, you with me? You with me?
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to talk to these women?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to dominate. Okay.
No. I was thinking, how tricky it is for people entrepreneurs to decide to exhibit at these shows right now in the tri-state area, but especially in New York, because there's such an imbalance of licenses that have been given out, meaning, the dispensaries versus the cultivators and the manufacturers and this and that. And, the ecosystem, the cannabis ecosystem is so, imbalanced. Like, what are you hearing from people who are wanting to come exhibit, but, a lot of licenses haven't been given out yet in this state. So I'm just curious how you're seeing people responding or talking, or are they coming anyway, hoping they're going to get licenses? And are there good representation for the tri-state area, hoping people can get into the different states, and just curious. Mm-hmm.
No, we have a number of all aspects of the supply chain are represented at the show. We have Growers Field that looks at cultivators. We have Cannabis that goes on Thursday and Friday morning looking at the financial sector. And then we have the OCM, who's going to be out there all day helping people to understand their new set of regs. I know that New York is a bit frustrated with how the rollout has come, but this is par for the course. I mean, you are getting up and running a brand new industry. And most cannabis spaces usually take about 2 years after legalization happens to actually get stores up and running, to figure out what's going on, to figure out how they're regulating it. And New York is unique with the number of pop-up shops that have proliferated the city. While some might see that as a bad thing, I see that as a golden opportunity for the OCM to be going out and helping to license folks who really want a space. And so I think this is an opportunity for lots of folks to come out and really understand the progression from legacy to legal. And I think we're embracing that and helping people to understand that there are many pathways to do that. And our show has the folks that can help you get there.
So I think that's great. And Gretchen, I applaud your answer. I agree 100%. And Pam, back to who's attending as far as licensees, non-licensed, those who are applying. There's a variety, it's as Gretchen says, and the OCM's programming, and they're exhibiting on the floor. Cannabis NYC, which is the New York City arm for working with the cannabis industry and growing it in New York and working closely with the OCM. It's headed up by Dashita Dawson. She's the founding director, and it's under the auspices of the Small Business Services, and she's our keynote, by the way. But there's going to be, they're exhibiting on the floor, but as a result, we're going to have a lot of different elements from the industry coming, as far as licensed card holders, those who applied, the card holders who don't have a product yet out there, or retail place yet that they've selected. Some are still trying to find a place to put their products and open up the retail store. This is all very complicated, as you've said, the whole broadcast, and it's great. It was just great conversations. So this is why, and Gretchen had this brainstorm to bring in the OCM so that they can meet people directly and have the Q&A from card holders, those who want to get a license, those who don't know anything about it. So they're exhibiting on the floor, and they're actually going to run and develop the programming on that last day of the conference from a certain time, like the whole afternoon, and they're bringing in their officials from the New York State Office of Cannabis Management, and they are going to answer directly all of these questions from all of these different people that, you know, who will be there. So it is very pointed. It was a great question. So we expect a whole different groups, all groups of every kind. And and when you look at that, it just really makes for a great show. It makes for a great attendance. It's everyone wants to be in the business. It is the right profile. There's going to be money managers there, people who are looking to invest, capital providers. This is where you need to network and bring the industries together at all points. And it's going to make it. I'm just getting chills thinking about it. Not because it's my show, and not because Gretchen does a wonderful job. She does all that. It's just because it really, I think it's hitting all the points this time. I really do.
Yeah, and I think one of the other really good things about your show is that it is cost, you know, it's not cost prohibitive to come, because, you know, a lot of trade shows are supposed to be, you know, order writing shows, and these trade shows in the cannabis industry can't really be that right now. So what's the, you know, return on investment for, you know, people to exhibit and, you know, travel to New York City for these shows? So to make it accessible financially, because really it is about building partnerships, finding resources and learning. That's what I'm finding at going to the shows, because they're not order writing shows like typical trade shows are that I've ever been to outside this industry.
Right.
So that's a great opportunity.
True. That's true, and I agree with you. And the thing about the keynote, it's open to everyone that's registered. So if people are coming and they got a complimentary pass to just go to the expo floor, or they purchased just an expo floor pass, they can go in and listen to the keynote. Everybody's allowed in. We don't keep anyone out, because people want to hear from the top. They want to hear from the icons or the professionals that are there to speak to them.
And I've been to so many shows where regulators show up, they speak for a half hour, and then they're running for the door. And just because they're busy people, I don't think it's that they don't want to interact with the industry. But so that's why it was so important to us to have the OCM there all day, to have them there each day on the floor. Same with Cannabis NYC. We want people to understand that this city and this state is ready to do business with them. And so we're ready to help open that door so people can make that connection.
Christina, you mentioned Deshita Dawson as your keynote. When is that happening on the program, the timing and date?
So we have on Thursday, June 1, the opening day. There's at 10 to 10, we have a ribbon cutting ceremony in the lobby where we welcome our exhibitors and sponsors. Deshita Dawson is expected to be at that ribbon cutting ceremony and preside, along with the CEO of the Javits Center, who's going to preside. And probably some other city officials will be coming as well. And so that's she's going to start there, and then she's going to go do her keynote at about 10:15. It'll be on the main stage, June 1.
Got it. Thank you. I'm making a note. That's all.
Yes. We're very excited about it.
Yeah. And who else? I mean, I actually looked at some of the breakout rooms and some of the panels that you have. Anything stand out in particular that you'd like to plug and people would be interested? Sure,
I do. And Gretchen can help me out here. In the mornings, as Gretchen mentioned, on Thursday and Friday, we're featuring the financial sector of the industry, where we have family offices and speakers that are from a financial background, and that will be discussing investment, discussing real estate from an investment standpoint. We have Tremaine Wright is speaking that day, and she's going to be discussing. She's going to be interviewed by Deborah Borchardt, an industry known from Green Market Report. She's going to be interviewed, and she's going to talk about the opportunities of investing in the adult use market in New York. And we're going to have Trends from Headset is going to be there in the morning on June 1. So there'll be all of that wonderful discussions about what are the opportunities, what are the highlights, Then you'll be hearing from the financial people in real estate, in loan and capital loan and lending. All of those will be addressed in the mornings of Thursday and Friday. Then we have the CWCBX programming. And by the way, people can stay for each. Depending on the size, they can sit, size of the room as far as like how many in the room. We have wonderful programming. Gretchen, you want to take it from here and talk a little bit about the CWCBExpo stuff in the afternoons?
Sure. One that I'm looking forward to in particular, and not just because I'm a woman, but we have an amazing program that's going to be moderated by Thunder Walker. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She is out of Oklahoma, but she has New York roots. And she is just amazing and brilliant. And she's going to be leading a panel there discussing some great legends on the female side of the industry who are going to be with us. So I'm looking forward to that one. Another
that's our social equity panel on heroes in the industry, right?
Yes. Another thing that I'm looking forward to, I don't think you've mentioned yet, Christine, is the dispensary workshop. And this is not just this is now you got a license. Now what do you do with it? And really helps address some of these supply chain issues and things that New Yorkers have really been struggling with. So I think there are a number of folks who've been issued licenses but haven't been able to get open yet. And so I'm hopeful that maybe that'll help address some of those concerns for folks.
No, and thanks for reminding me. That's from on Saturday, by the way. That workshop is on Saturday at 8 o'clock, 8 to 11, so that it's before when the OCM comes, and then whoever comes can listen to the OCM in the seminar. But that's given by Cannabis Business Advisors, Sarah Gullickson and Maxine Cott. They're very well known. They've been doing this for a while, as far as dispensary ownership, licensing, all of the issues involved. Go ahead, Gretchen.
I got a question for both
Sure,
of you.
go for it.
Percentage of vendors exhibiting that are not from New York. Have you seen a rise? Because everybody looks at the New York market as, oh my God, it's going to surpass California in 5 to 10 years. Are you starting to see people coming from the West Coast, from Colorado to New York to do more business?
The answer is yes. And I can't give you a percentage because I would say that there's more from out of state than in state. I mean it's right. pretty obvious at this point. Yep. I don't know how far they are. I don't know how far from New York they are, but I can say the preponderance of the exhibitors on the floor is probably out of state.
Yeah.
But that's because what you said, Jimmy, they're looking for expansion. They're looking for growing pardon the pun, getting their product out and seeing what's the opportunities here. And that's what this is all about, isn't it? And that's where the trade show is very important. Conferences like this, shows like ours. You talk about the economic downturn. I heard some questions and things. This is the time when live events and face-to-face is going to help people come out of whatever fear and concerns they have about the future of their business. When you think about the investment in a trade show, it's probably the best investment a cannabis business owner can do right now.
Because you're limited for marketing and advertising unless you call me. Because by the way, we do take ads in the cannabis industry, just for the record, and I even produce them with compliance in mind. They're all educational. It's all Q&A. It's not a call to action. It's we being in the industry have an obligation to educate those who are curious about what is going on in the cannabis space, and whether that's from a business perspective or from actually a medicinal perspective. This is what we have to do. I remember being in Albany, and Aaron Smith, who's the executive director of the NCIA, they just had their lobby days. And Aaron got up in front of everybody and he said, everyone in this room has an obligation to educate those who are not educated about this plan. It's the only way we're going to get to normalization, if not legalization. And I think legalization is way in the future, but I just want fair acceptance that this plant medicine is here to stay in our society. It's coming out of the dark ages, if you will, coming out of prohibition. And there's so much information out there now. research and science continue to drive it. And I just wonder if, how much are you finding that people are getting more educated about this plant? Are you finding that they're starting to understand it? Then Christine, I'll go with you first. Go ahead.
Well, I would say yes. I think that conferences like ours are important for that. I think colleges, and what you'll find at our show, we have University Row. We've got over a dozen colleges that are resident on the show floor as exhibitors. They're very excited to join us and to be there. They have curriculum in cannabis business. And so this is a very great indicator. And it's not the only 12 colleges that offer that. There's dozens more across the country. Right. And there'll be hundreds within a couple of years. Right. And it might be a standard fare in a curriculum, in a college education. And I think you hit it on the head. Education is a very important piece. We've known this for a long time, and that's why we've built conferences. That's why we have different topics that are very relevant and timely. And that's why it's important that nobody miss anything. And one of the unique things about our education when at the conference, there's one big room, it's one big main stage. You come in there, you won't miss anything. You don't have to make a decision about, oh, I'm gonna go to there's 8 tracks and there's 8 rooms. That drives me nuts when that happens, okay? And I know I don't want to make any attendee feel like a nut job. So anyway, Gretchen, what do you have to say about the education piece? Because Jimmy hit it on the head.
I agree. I think education is happening. I actually live down in DC, so I talk to a number of lawmakers all the time, and you would be surprised at their lack of information on this industry that they need to be regulating. But it's getting better. Years ago, I worked on the Hill as a staffer, and we used to draw straws on who will actually go out there and talk to the pot lobbyists that showed up. Now there are staffers who are dedicated to the cannabis topic, whether it's in agriculture or justice or healthcare. It depends on how that office is really viewing it. But it is being seen and taken more seriously, at least in Washington it is. And, you know, folks are understanding and learning more. My mother is asking about cannabis and how she can use it in this and that. And she would never, ever have. She might have in the 60s, but, you know, growing up, no, that wasn't her thing.
At least she remembers the 60s.
She
okay?
does.
This is what I love about age-appropriate people in the cannabis space, okay? Because I was born in the 50s, okay? And now I embrace age-appropriate people. And by the way, yours truly will be teaching at Stockton University starting June 6th. So I saw that Stockton is on the floor.
Yes.
I'm going to be teaching Getting to Normalization, Changing the Stigma of Cannabis Through Public Relations.
Wow. Congratulations.
The title's great. I can't wait for the professor to actually have his crap together, to actually get it to know. I have a curriculum. I've got my lesson plans. I'm really excited about it. It is not my first rodeo as far as teaching college students. However, it definitely is the first time I've taught in the cannabis industry as a subject, as opposed to the broadcast or the sportscasting industry. So it's you go onto the Stockton University website, and I don't know if you could search my name, but if you search normalization and what they're offering, you can now get onto that and sign up for it, and please do. So that was a shameful plug, but it's also, we're wrapping up the show. So I thought it would be a good time to kind of wrap it all up. Christine, how do people find out about your expo? Where can they get tickets? Go ahead.
CannabisMeansBusiness.com. Just put that into your browser, CannabisMeansBusiness.com or CWCBExpo.com. Either one will work. And we made a code for Green Rush 23, Green Rush 23. And that gives people access to the show floor compliments of Jimmy Young, Green Rush 23, and 20% off on the seminars, on all the seminars. So they could come and we would welcome them and love to see them.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for that. And I look forward to working with you guys again, because some of the people that I met 4 years ago in Boston, maybe the last time you were in Boston, I think it was, right?
Before actually in 2019, I think we were
2019. I've been going through my files.
It's about 4 years ago. That's, my gosh.
And Kimberly Burns from Tribe Tokes, I met. thanks to Annie Scully introduced me to Kimberly, and she continues to be a friend. And I know that she too is a speaker, I think at one of your,
And she's on our advisory board too.
yeah, she's
Wonderful. We love Kim B.
we love Kim B. We all, anybody who knows her loves her, which I think is a beautiful thing. And Pam, I could say the same thing about you. Anybody who knows you loves you, okay? Because that's your reputation. And just so you guys know, Pam has replaced Deborah Borchardt on our We Talk News as our New York correspondent. So she has big shoes to fill, but then again, we love Deborah, and she knows she's always welcome, and she's doing a great job now, as usual, with her Green Market Report.
Yeah.
So I want to thank the CWCBExpo people.
It's a mouthful.
Steve, thank you. Great staff. They're awesome. I even texted her and she got back to me right away. I love that. Pam, thank you for all the work that you do for We Talk News, which, by the way, follows this live stream with our regularly scheduled weekly news show, which is a coast-to-coast roundup of the news. We have 10, sometimes 14 correspondents giving 90-second reports from their states. That's the timing of what they're supposed to do. Sometimes they get a little bit long-winded. I don't mind that, really and truly, especially with someone who has a lot of wind that he has to share, let's just say. Anyway, so for the CWCBExpo people, for Dan French, the video director of Pro Cannabis Media, for Pam Schmiel, I'm Jimmy Young. Thank you so much for watching another edition of Green Rush Live. And remember, it is a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, while Minnesota is on the verge of becoming the 23rd state to legalize cannabis, the battle to even get that question on the ballot in Florida continues to be difficult. And now, their attorney general says the question is too vague, and she will try to block it. A week after the New Hampshire Senate shuts down the latest attempt to open an adult use market in the Granite State, their governor, John Sununu, says he's supporting state-run stores. And why getting baked and bagged is not a good thing for an unlicensed edible maker in New York City. All that and a story about a billionaire owner of a rolling papers company who admits he doesn't smoke it and couldn't roll a joint if his life depended on it. All that plus coast-to-coast coverage on We Talk News with Elena Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Weed Talk News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of the battle to end cannabis prohibition in the world. I'm Elena Pinto. All eyes are on Minnesota now because that state is really just one signature away from legalizing adult use in the state. The Minnesota House and Senate have both passed bills to pave the way for adult use to begin on July 1st of this year. But Governor Tim Walz thinks it will take longer to set up the regulatory structure and sales rules. At least he's not saying he will veto it. So right now, Minnesota is poised to become the 23rd state to legalize cannabis. One of the first states, though, in the Midwest to jump on the cannabis weed wagon is Michigan. They continue to have their own issues with regulations and human behavior. Here's NORML's executive director for Michigan, our own Rick Thompson, with the Michigan Cannabis Report.
Hello again. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. A new update has come to light in the Green Peak Skymint scandal. As a reminder, Skymint was placed in receivership in March of this year. Just this week, Innovative Industrial Properties, a company which owns many of the existing Skymint cultivation and retail facilities, announced they had repossessed several of those properties. During a quarterly conference call with investors, Innovative revealed that they had captured 2 retail locations, which were described as small and worth about $3 million. They also took control of the large Summit building as well. Now, the Summit building is a huge 146,000 square foot facility in Delta Township near Lansing. Skymint was granted a license to operate adult use cannabis cultivation and processing facilities on that site in 2021. using the, at one time, popular financing method of a sale-leaseback. In that scheme, Skymen agreed to buy the property, then immediately sold it to Innovative Properties, who immediately leased the building and fixtures back to Skymen. Now, in that scenario, Skymen owns the license to operate and the cannabis, but Innovative owns everything else. And that means when Skymen can't pay their bills, the property owner, Innovative, can eject them from the building. Innovative's quarterly update said they're currently shopping the Summit property around to other buyers. According to the report, and I quote, "The receiver is paying rent on all other remaining properties leased to Green Peak, including the Harvest Park cultivation and processing facility and 4 other retail locations." Former Green Peak leader Jeff Redway was booted from the company just weeks ago. For the first time ever, Ascend Wellness has reported a profit, according to their press release and a story in Benzinga. Ascend recently expanded operations in Grand Rapids and is a well-known multi-state operator. They're active in 7 states and have more than 30 cannabis retail operations. Their first quarter 2023 gross sales numbers are up to $141 million, a new record for the company. Net sales, $114 million, and offsets their $18.5 million loss. Although the revenue figure is an increase of only 2% over last quarter, their net loss in quarter 1 of 2022 was more than $28 million. Ascend is touting this as a turnaround moment for their never-been profitable company. In addition to opening new retail operations in Illinois, Massachusetts, and Michigan, the company also made their first harvests and sales in the Pennsylvania market. Well, a new article by New Cannabis Ventures points out a remarkable sales trend in our Michigan cannabis categories. As a reminder, March's sales were up 16% in the adult use market in March. Total sales in that month were just shy of $250 million, a new record, which includes the totals for our state's failing medical marijuana market. One category of cannabis product overachieved during a month of great achievement. Pre-roll sales expanded dramatically, up 130% in just a single month. Michigan's first quarter sales are up 46.2% over first quarter 2022. Now, April sales are always boosted by the 420 holiday. Despite all this positivity in the sales column, many Michigan cannabis entities are struggling to survive. That point was driven home by an email from the law offices of Barton Morris, who's a well-respected cannabis business attorney, which carries the subject line of, "Prevent the collapse of your business today." The law firm has authored a guidebook to maintaining the health of your cannabis business, which is focused on partnerships and intercorporate communications. The email includes this description: partnership mismanagement can take many forms, from poor communication to unequal distribution of workload to disagreements over financial management. When these issues are not addressed, they can fester and lead to disputes that can damage the partnership and the business as a whole. Now, this statement underscores the dangers of C-suite squabbles, which can be more destructive to corporate survival than even the low price of cannabis. The guidebook is free for download, and you can reach out to the law offices of Barton Morris for a copy of the guidebook. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
The state of Florida has a vibrant and successful medical marijuana program, but the movement to get adult use on the next ballot might have hit another snag. The state attorney general, Ashley Moody, submitted the citizen-led petition to legalize cannabis use by adults to that state Supreme Court. However, she wants them to block the current question and create a simpler one. The AG wants a simpler one subject question to be put before voters, and that state's Republican Party is trying to block any kind of cannabis legalization question on the ballot, despite over 700,000 signatures supporting the initiative of Smart and Safe Florida. The latest signature totals after April are 786,000, with 891,000 needed by July 1st to move forward. Of course, if the state attorney general gets her wish, A completely new question will have to be created and a new signing initiative started. All this despite over 70% approval for legalization in that state. No such issues anymore in the state of New Jersey, however, where they started their adult use sales last year. So now it's a whole different set of questions and initiatives like welcoming out of state dispensary owners. That includes Massachusetts-based Nova Farms. Jill Goldsberry has the latest from the Garden State.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jill Goldsberry here with We Talk News New Jersey, and I'm here with the New Jersey Report. Here's what's happening. The New Jersey Cannabis Insider Awards 2023 takes place on June 8th and will recognize excellence and achievement in the New Jersey cannabis industry. The award show will return to the Carteret Performing Arts Center in Carteret, New Jersey, with a new format that includes more awards. So space is limited for this exclusive event, and tickets are actually on sale now because voting has ended. So get those tickets now. It's a dress to impress event that will include a cocktail hour, the award show, open bar, networking, late night bites, drinks, and entertainment. All the things people in the cannabis industry love, right? So winners in each category will actually be invited to a special rooftop event and after party. And we know that's going to be fun. Some of the awards to look out for are excellence in cannabis law applications, excellence in cannabis law municipal lawyers, excellence in commercial building operations, excellence in dispensary operations, excellence in consulting, and let's see, minority-owned business of the year, woman-owned business of the year. You get the point. There's a lot of awards. So get your tickets. It's happening on June 8th. In other news, in Woodbury, New Jersey, Nova Farms, which is the Northeast's largest privately owned, vertically integrated cannabis operator, is proud to announce that they're opening a flagship operation here in New Jersey. It's the first retail dispensary in Woodbury, New Jersey, opening on actually today on the 19th. And Nova is not the first, but it's the first one in New Jersey that is a non-conversion, exclusively recreational adult use dispensary. Try saying that 5 times. And according to Nova's spokesperson, New Jersey is a great example of this, and they're excited to show the New Jersey market what Nova Farms is all about. And currently, Nova has 4 other dispensaries, 3 in Massachusetts, 1 in Maine, and with 2 outdoor cultivations in Massachusetts and Maine, and 1 indoor grow facility in Rhode Island. So they also manufacture and process cannabis products in those states, and will do so in New Jersey. So look out for them. They are going to be located at 642 Montua Pike in Woodbury, New Jersey, and they will operate longer hours as well, from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. And from what I understand, Nova is an experienced retail operator that will bring its expertise to the New Jersey market. So we look out for that. Another opening coming up soon is Elevated by the Cannabis Lady Dispensary. Elevated will feature craft cannabis from local cultivators like the brand Miss Grass, who's also from New Jersey, luxury products from My Base Bud and Her Highness NYC, things like that. So if you're looking for more information on Elevated by the Cannabis Lady, they will actually be opening, soft opening in July, it looks like, this summer. Don't quote me on the date, but I was told that the soft opening is coming up in July. They're going to be located at 9 Highland Place, Maplewood, New Jersey. And feel free to go to the cannabislady.com for more information. Thanks for watching. I'm Jill Goldsberry for We Talk News New Jersey.
The state of New Hampshire continues to try and rid themselves of the distinction of being the only New England state to not have an adult use market. The House has passed a bill, but last week the Senate there voted that down. In the meantime, their governor, Chris Sununu, announced he would sign the bill for state-run cannabis stores. This back-and-forth policy battle will continue for a while. One state in New England that is starting to get some attention for the way they have opened their own cannabis market is the great state of Maine. We have a new correspondent from that state, Dr. Stephen Ivanovsky. And here's what is happening in vacation land.
I'm Stephen Ivanovsky, also known as Dr. Be Well, with the Maine Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. The news in Maine this week is an article that's out there is how did Maine get legal weed right? While California's and others struggled. And I would argue that Maine has gotten cannabis right, as they, they're doing very well compared to other states in decreasing the, the illicit market and getting sales, increased in both the medical and the adult use market. I think that that's definitely a great thing. However, I think that some of the article did attribute that to some of the stuff, having to do with the tracking system in the state. I think that is helpful for, for consumers potentially. But I think it really had to do with the organic grown caregiver program, that started here in about 2010 and has had, many people who have gone through that program and have still successfully steward that program. I think that's the, what's really driving the success for the state. So thanks so much for, for hearing me out today. I'm Steve Ivanovsky, Dr. Be Well. You can check out the podcast if, if you guys want to hear more about some Maine cannabis news. Thank you for today for Weed Talk News. Giddy up.
Out west in Oregon, changes and tougher regulations are now being put in place for all dispensary operators. One is a requirement to pay your taxes. As Marianne Kersagi tells us, that state's Department of Revenue says 9% of licensed dispensaries are in the rears.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This week, Oregon's Governor Kotek announced that cannabis retailers will be required to prove that they've paid their state taxes before receiving or renewing their license. This is welcome news for the industry as companies struggle for profitability. Reducing the number of retailers will likely improve the financial stability of those who are able to pay their bills and remain operational. The Department of Revenue reports that approximately 9% of cannabis retailers haven't fully paid their taxes. Also, the recent audit of the OLCC by the Oregon Secretary of State's office highlighted several opportunities for improvement. An overall theme of the audit is that the cannabis regulations were designed in a time when federal intervention was still a possibility and the Cole Memorandum was in effect. As federal authorities have not intervened in state licensed businesses, the landscape has changed. The OLCC needs to adapt to the times and work on improving the industry. We will see if this becomes a reality. That'll do it for the Oregon Report this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
Akerna was one of the first cannabis companies to go public and be listed on the NASDAQ. With the current market correction happening in the industry, more and more companies are merging. Akerna wants to merge with a Bitcoin company called Griffin Mining. One investor in Akerna is trying to block that merger, claiming that the company misled their investors about that merger. Albert McCaffrey and his representatives filed suit in federal court in Colorado this week with the hope they can block the merger from moving forward. In the meantime, that stock and many like it in the cannabis space continues to go up and down like a seesaw. With more insight on the cannabis stocks, here's Doug Miller.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. Cannabis software firm Akerna Corp is facing a federal lawsuit brought on by one of their shareholders aiming to halt the company's planned merger with Gryphon Digital Mining Inc. Now let's look at that stock chart. The ticker is KERN, and the chart looks like it's curling down, so it does not look like this lawsuit is a good thing for the company at the moment. I'm going to keep my eye on it and see how it plays out. And Curaleaf reported their first quarter results. They did have a revenue of $336.5 million and $115.8 million in cash. But remember, they have $593.8 million in outstanding debt. So make sure you're really looking at the important things when you're looking at the balance sheet. I will say the new CEO, Matt Darren, he's been doing a really good job trying to salvage this company. It was run really bad. Now let's look at the stock. It's trading around $2.88 and it's curling up. It looks like it could touch around that $4 area, but lock in those profits because it could get really ugly for this MSO and many others. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
This is the week that the NCIA entertains their members in Washington, D.C. with an event called Lobby Days. Lobbying is an important tool to share knowledge with our elected officials in our nation's capital. And this is the 11th year that the NCIA has held Lobby Days. And here's a few reasons why the experience of lobbying for a cause or an industry is so important in our republic.
It is my first time lobbying with NCIA, and I'm here because I want to add to the discussion.
So it's my first time here. I'm very excited. There needs to be folks that come from backgrounds like mine here walking the halls of Congress and sharing our experiences.
It went really well. They were very receptive to us. They definitely had questions about the banking and how all that works in our different states.
We're not treated like any other regular business on Main Street, right? We're Main Street Cannabis, but we're not treated like a Main Street company.
Help small businesses stay in the fight, so to speak, against the big money coming in and buying everything up.
My first time being here, I would highly recommend for other people that are in the cannabis industry, Main Street cannabis companies, mom and pop companies, come here, let them hear your voice, let them see your face, let them hear your story. It's important that our elected officials get to hear from us, the average Joes in the room that are actually the small businesses that are leading this industry and that are creating these jobs and opportunities.
Never a dull moment in the Big Apple, certainly not since they opened their legal market. Now, if you are still operating without a license, you could be subject to a raid like the one on Sweet Tooth, an edible bakery in the Upper East Side. It just so happens that dispensary opened in the neighborhood of the mayor of New York, Eric Adams. And with more from New York, here's Pam Schmiel.
I'm Pam Schmiel, host of the Mary Jane Society podcast with the New York City Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Everyone is demanding transparency from DASNY, the company overseeing funding for social equity licensees. It was recently revealed that more than 45 members of the New York Society of Certified Public Accountants sent a letter to the Office of Cannabis Management alleging that DASNY is officially creating a monopoly on accounting for cannabis dispensaries. And on Monday, more than 40 social equity licensees got together and sent a letter asking the state to seize the account for the remaining money in the social equity fund. And in other news, New York has barely rolled out its legal cannabis program, but now they just announced they are preparing to help businesses in danger of failing by creating alternative options to bankruptcy. And one thing is for sure, if you are an unlicensed dispensary, don't open one near a government office. The latest one to get closed down is a few blocks from the New York City mayor's residence. And I'll end this on some good news. Dispensaries are now allowed to include an indoor area within their dispensary for an on-site consumption lounge. That's this week's New York City Cannabis Report. I'm Pam Schmiel from the Mary Jane Society podcast, reporting for Weed Talk News.
The state of Colorado might have the most mature cannabis market outside of California in the nation, but their sales and subsequent taxes continue to fall. Right now, the average market rate of a pound of cannabis is at $649, the lowest since the market opened in 2014. The sales totals for March of this year was just $139.6 million. And while that sounds like a lot, sales have not been this low since the fall of 2022. Maybe everyone in Colorado is now shopping in Missouri. That market continues to flourish from out-of-state consumers. Here's Brandon Jones with our Missouri Cannabis Report.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones from Big Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News, sponsored by my boys at Baker Brands. So yeah, that's right. We're seeing still a big surge from all the out-of-state people trying to come into Missouri to get recreational cannabis that's now passed here for 3 months. Colorado, I would be a little worried because you got to drive through Kansas to get here unless you're going way up and over or way down and around, going back. I would be very, very cautious driving through Kansas with cannabis. That's just my note. I grew up in Kansas. My parents still live there. I have 2 cars to make sure when I'm in Kansas, I have nothing, because even paraphernalia in the state can get you up to 30-day minimums. You have to bail yourself out. A friend of mine had a roach this small, and it happened to her. She was in her mid-60s. They pulled her over going to the grocery store, found it underneath her coffee cup, and actually took her to jail, and she had to get bonded out for a little bitty roach. So please, if you're crossing state lines, be very, 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 very careful. That's why I think a lot of the Missouri market is seeing a big tick up in disposables and pre-rolls, because people can come from across the state, take their medicine while they're still in the state, and be able to leave legally and not have to worry about taking products back around state lines. So Friday and Saturday, state sales around the borders. I know specifically here in Kansas City, they see a big surge in disposables and in pre-rolls, because people can, like I said, indulge in that in one day. And we are seeing just a huge sales. And another big thing is happening here is obviously a lot of more employees, because a lot of more business. So we are starting to see some unions trying to take place here within the cannabis industry. So a lot of the employees now at different dispensaries are trying to make a union for the industry. So that's another thing here on the forefront in Missouri. So again, I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Boost your buds. Have a great week.
Brandon Jones, Missouri Cannabis Report is brought to you by Baker Brands, a curated B2B marketplace for head shops and dispensaries.
If you happen to be in Pennsylvania, you know it's the cheesesteak that Philly is best known for as far as local food goes. Hopefully you didn't want a pizza, since the state shut down a pizzeria after they added a special ingredient to their pies. Here's Maya Christofowitz with our Pennsylvania Cannabis Report.
I'm Maya Christofowitz from Scarlet Express, and I'm here in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, reporting for Weed Talk News. Philadelphia authorities say they have shut down a Queen Village pizzeria that puts cannabis in its food and beverages. A joint inspection conducted by the city's licenses and inspections and health departments found that Stone Pizzeria lacked a business license and health certificate. So, 3 uniformed police officers accompanied inspectors as they examined the business, which is guarded by a security guard. Stone was attempting to fulfill to-go orders while the inspection occurred, including one that had a pre-rolled joint. Stone's Philadelphia location, like its others, operates like a speakeasy. There's no sign outside, and customers are texted the address after paying for reservations by using the app. Stone offers a fixed price meal at $120 a person that includes pizza, salad, lollipop chicken, garlic knots, cannoli, sorbet, and sodas, all of which then get an addition of oils containing THC. However, the sale and possession of marijuana is still illegal in Pennsylvania, so the restaurant was instructed to cease operations. Now, together the Queen Village Neighborhood Association, the Head House District, the Society Hill Neighborhood Association, and Bella Vista Neighborhood Association have asked for a change to South Street zoning overlay that would ban smoking lounges such as cigar bars, hookah bars, and presumably pot pizza shops from opening, because they want to encourage bars and restaurants that attract residents, not tourists. Well, that's a wrap from Pennsylvania. I'm Maya Christofowitz from Scarlet Express, and I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not in Pennsylvania. From Weed Talk News, have a fabulous week.
Out west in Washington State, they continue to make changes to their regulations. So here's Matthew Friedlander with more on that.
Hello, everyone. Matthew Friedlander here, coming to you from the owner's office at Skagit Organics with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. I've had a few interesting weeks since the legislative session ended. We are currently in the middle of what people are calling Brewstergate. The LCB has determined that a group of licensees in the town of Brewster, Washington, all seem to be contaminated with legacy pesticides left over from pesticide use in the 60s and 70s at old apple orchards that have now been converted to cannabis grows. The LCB is claiming that many of these products contain unallowed pesticides, and they decided the best way to deal with that was to completely shut down a number of licenses indefinitely. So not great news on a number of fronts there. The governor did convene a special session as well to deal with the Blake decision from 2021. The Washington State Supreme Court essentially decriminalized hard drug possession and use in Washington, and the legislators got back together to pass a fix to the Blake decision that essentially recriminalizes hard drug use and possession. Although instead of being a felony, it will now be a misdemeanor, and you will have to be referred to treatment a few times before you can be charged criminally. So that helps in some regards, putting the focus back on treatment instead of criminalizing people who may have a drug addiction. That's what I got for you today for the Washington Cannabis Report. Matthew reporting for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
As we check north of the border in Canada, the big news there this week is a change to their tax laws. Here's Debbie Facey with our Canadian Cannabis Report.
Hi, this is Debbie Facey from Weed Talk News with your Canadian Toke of the Week. So in Canada, we haven't necessarily had that many upcoming, or I don't want to say newsworthy, but exciting news when it came to the last few weeks. So this week, I was able to compile some of the last few days of what has been going on in Canada in the cannabis industry. So as of right now, in Manitoba has now decided to retract their bill, or I would just say the addition to the bill, which was to ensure that there was safety when it came to the recreational cannabis sales, which meant that they had added a 6% tax on top of the taxes that they were going to have to pay each month, yearly, and for tax season when it came to operating their stores. With this new law being implemented and being retracted, this has now allowed many of the Manitobians, stores and store owners to actually gain a refund when it comes to all of the taxes that they have paid since the legalization or since the bill came into effect as of 2020. So Manitoba and the dispensaries and the cannabis industry out there is going to be gaining a nice little boost. I don't want to say an incentive, but getting back what they do deserve due to the fact that the recreational cannabis hasn't been something that has created a problem here in Canada and has not created a reason to have an excess tax on top of what they already are paying for their cannabis. Next, what we have is StratCan had put out a release stating the fact that after and with and during and so forth in the future, when it comes to the cannabis legalization decision and it having a recreational and the medicinal aspect of it, there was no rise in the usage and there was no rise in the criminal acts either. And this was something that most Canadians and most cannabis users already knew, but at the same time, the government has to ensure that it is not going to be happening and isn't happening and it isn't going to be a problem in the future. The last thing that we have in Canada is a spike in recalls when it comes to the artificial candies that the illicit market are creating, such as the ones based on Skittles, Mars, Sour Kids, anything that has been appealing to kids. This is something that we have been trying to implement and get across when it comes to the safety of cannabis edibles, because we don't want to be showcasing to kids, and that is something that I truly agree. And especially when it comes to the packaging compared to a legal and an illicit market product, the fanciness behind it isn't necessarily needed. So it's something that the illicit market should look at and realize that maybe we should tone it down a bit, not create these products that are already created, that are already geared to kids, that are already something that we know that is going to create a further problem when it comes to illicit market, but maybe look into how the legal market is actually utilizing their packaging and their labeling. And that's not me saying that the illicit market should continue what they're doing, but if you are making products for yourself, this is something where you should be taking into consideration when it comes to the labeling and when it comes to the packaging. We don't want to be stating and referring the wrong idea. So this is Debbie Facey with We Talk News with your cannabis toke of the week.
While the DEA continues to figure out whether hemp should be under their jurisdiction rather than U.S. agriculture, more states continue to give out hemp growing licenses. Here's Karen Black with our Arizona report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting. Welcome to the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Hemp Biosciences, a subsidiary of Tucson-based public company Weed Inc., was awarded a hemp cultivation license by the state of Arizona. The company plans to grow up to 100 acres of hemp as inputs to their manufacturing of THC plus CBD pre-rolls, CBD oil, and other hemp-based products, including some to be focused on minor cannabinoids. Chief Operating Officer Nicole Breen was also awarded her facility agent card, making her eligible to buy and sell direct from and to Arizona dispensaries. Alicia Deals, the owner of Cookies Dispensary in Tempe, and Arizona's first Black female social equity operator, is awaiting a May 30th court hearing for her father, Robert Deals, an Air Force veteran and ordained minister who is currently serving time for selling the same plant. He is on year 12 of an 18-year sentence and plans to ask the court to remove his sentence enhancements, to run all charges concurrently, and to release him for time served. Commenting on what is being billed as the ultimate irony, Ms. Deals is quoted as saying, "Our family's biggest burden has now become our family's biggest blessing." Ms. Deals is also the founder and CEO of Life Changers, which provides professional assistance to families with loved ones who are incarcerated. On May 15th, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs signed budget legislation into law that includes $5 million in funding for research into the potential of psilocybin mushrooms for a variety of medical conditions. A complementary bill, which the governor also signed, outlines requirements for related clinical trials. The money will be distributed by Arizona's Department of Health Services during fiscal year 2023-2024. As for Arizona cannabis events, here are a few. On May 18th, Canna Friends of Tucson hosted their May meeting at the historic Bates Mansion. The second annual Backwood Rolling Contest is scheduled to take place May 27th in Glendale. The event will feature food trucks, vendors, and prizes, with $500 going to the rolling contest winner. Tickets range from $10 to $25 and are available on Eventbrite. On May 28th, Canna Drag will kick off the Canna Wars at the Harumba Cafe and Social Club in Tucson. This over 21 multi-week event features 16 performers who will engage in various competitions and elimination rounds in pursuit of a $1,000 prize. Canna Wars is organized by Blue Dream Entertainment. Tickets are $20 each week. The Arizona Marijuana Industry Trade Association will host its monthly networking meeting May 31st in Scottsdale. For more information and tickets, go to mita-az.org. That's MITA-az.org. That's all for this week's Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black of Greenfinger Consulting, reporting for Weed Talk News.
In Vermont, which was the first state in the union to vote in an adult use cannabis program through legislative initiative, they are coming to the end of their session for now. Jessie Lynn Dolan has our Vermont Cannabis Report.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. With Vermont's legislative session coming to a close, the only cannabis bill to get traction this year, considered a general housekeeping bill, has passed both the Senate and House. This bill would award a one-time appropriation of $500,000 into the Cannabis Business Development Fund devoting a portion of the cannabis excise tax revenue toward racial and social equity and community reinvestment. The bill will allow outdoor licensees to be enrolled in current use, be exempt from certain sales tax, local control, and municipal bylaws, and be protected from nuisance under Act 250. It increases the Tier 1 manufacturing license annual gross to $50,000, increases the THC limit for cannabis products to 100 milligrams per package, removes the vape tax from hardware and devices, eases some advertising laws, and adds a propagation license to sell cannabis seeds directly to the public. For the medical program, it increases the qualifying conditions and plant count from 2 to 6 in flower. Vermont's longest running and largest Cannabis Cup competition and judging culminate at the Hetty's Cup Awards Party on Saturday, May 20th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Lang Farm in Essex. Visit Hetty, Vermont for more information and to secure your tickets. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrolls.com.
Not a lot going on in the Bay State of Massachusetts, but PCM founder Jimmy Young found a few things to share with his Massachusetts Cannabis Report.
Thanks, Elena. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and this is the Massachusetts Cannabis Report sponsored by Holyoke Cannabis. Now, if you have ever overdone it on a dose of a cannabis edible, you will understand the dangers for adults of not being responsible enough to lock up your stash. You want to keep it away from minors, whether they're your children or other people, but also be mindful what your own limits are. Sure enough, an adult administrator in the town of Pembroke brought an edible to school this past week, violating school rules. Now, wouldn't you know it, a 9-year-old special needs student got his hands on that edible somehow and thought it was a normal chocolate bar. Needless to say, a trip to the emergency room at the hospital in Pembroke was the next step before being released okay a few hours later. That school administrator is now on paid leave, and that is a suspension. The boy is fine, but hoping the adult in this sad saga has learned their lesson. Start low, go slow with your own dosing, and most importantly, be responsible about your own use and keep your stash under lock and key. This is another reason why we say it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. I'm Jimmy Young with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report, supported by Holyoke Cannabis.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
And finally tonight, just because you own a rolling papers company that is worth over $1 billion, it does not mean you smoke weed. That's right. Don Levin, the owner of the #1 rolling papers company in the world called Republic Brands. You might be familiar with the Easy Wider brand. Well, there are a handful of others, but that might be the most well known. And he admits he couldn't even roll a joint if his life depended on it. His company produces 1.2 billion packs of papers every year, and they control every phase of that process. Now, don't think he never partakes in this unique plant. Sure enough, during a party at the Playboy Mansion to celebrate his production of a Stephen King movie, he had an edible and forgot where he parked his car. I think we can all relate to that, even if we haven't fired up. Well, that's this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto. It's a whole new world of weed out there, so use it responsibly. We'll see you next time.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product.
Both cool the smoke from 1300 degrees to just 90 into your lungs. Plus, the maze pipe and pre-roll filters get rid of all the gunk that you just don't want in your lungs if you can help it.
Add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
We are a cultivation through to consumption lifestyle brand for the cannabis industry. Of course, the crown jewel in our product line is the Armoire home grow system. So now with Green Goddess Supply, we can take you everywhere from growing it in the Armoire right through to storing it, consuming it, rolling it, storing it, you name it, A to Z. Our goal is to enable everybody and anybody anywhere to be able to produce their own organic flower quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Safetiva Labs in Westfield is fast becoming the #1 testing lab for cannabis in Western Massachusetts. Safetiva understands the importance for accurate on-time test results for your product. That's why their current compliance panel turnaround time is less than 2 days. That's Safetiva Labs in Westfield. For more information, go to safetiva.com.